All right. Welcome back to the Call Movement podcast, where we talk about strength, longevity, wellness, and real life habits that help women to feel better in their body. And today's episode is for every woman who has ever stood in a grocery store holding a snack, a protein bar, a yogurt, or cereal box, or a healthy dessert and thought, is this actually good for me? Is this actually good for my family? Or is it the package that just really good at marketing? Because food labels can be pretty hard to understand and packages are loud. They say natural, clean ingredients, high protein, low sugar, organic, gluten-free, only 100 calories, zero guilt. But what does that actually mean? And today I have Rachel Simsons, and she is a registered dietitian and owner of Buffalo Dietitian, here to help us to decode food labels in a simple, realistic way. This is about knowing how to turn the package around and ask, will this food support my fullness, my energy levels, my blood sugar stability the way I want it? And Rachel, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. Did I miss anything in your introduction that you'd like us to know?
No, thank you for having me, and I think you covered everything.
That's awesome. So let's get into. So I'm going to give you a practical example. If I am in a grocery store, I have my obnoxious kids. They're wild, man. They're crazy. I don't like taking them to the grocery store. And we're busy, we're hungry, and we have to get a snack. And we have like 10 seconds to get something. What should I check first?
So, first thing you're going to check is going to be the calories per serving size, and then you're going to check protein, fiber, and then after that, I usually check carbohydrates and fat grams.
Protein and fiber. Why should I be paying attention to that?
Protein and fiber, they really give us that feeling of satiety. They give us that feeling of fullness. They do help regulate our blood glucose levels. And so think about like if you were to have historically like a bagel for breakfast, which is mostly just carbohydrates versus a bagel plus some sort of protein and fiber, like let's say, some eggs with some fruit, you would be more satisfied for a longer period of time. And so that's really at each meal, we're looking for all of those components. We're looking for carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and fiber to keep us, stable throughout the rest of the day.
So, Rachel, I'm asking the wrong questions when I'm selecting my snacks because my question is always like, is this good or bad? Based on your expertise, I should be asking, does it has enough protein? Does it have fiber? Will this actually hold me up for too long? Will help me with my blood sugar to stay more stable? I now, can we talk about sugar? When we look at the label, should we look for the total sugar first or the added sugar first? Can you explain the difference in a simple way?
Yeah. So back in January of 2021, they did change the nutrition fact label and they added within there. So they've always had total sugar, but it never deciphered was it natural sugar, which natural sugar is going to be found in things like dairy products in the form of lactose or in fruits in the form of fructose. And then you have added sugars in the form of like table sugar added to products. And so that's new on the nutrition fact label. So say it is a yogurt that is flavored. Okay, so say it's a strawberry yogurt and say its total sugar is 17. Well, it might have 12 grams of added sugar to make that strawberry flavor, but then the other 5 grams are natural sugar from the lactose in the dairy product. So a lot of people do freak out when they see sugar in like yogurts or cottage cheese or milk or things like that, or even like sugar in dried fruit bars, like Lara bars or Luna bars, because those are made with dried fruit. And so they'll freak out about the sugar, but not realizing that, hey, there are some natural forms of sugar in there. And with along with those natural forms of sugar come along with like in dairy products, protein, calcium, vitamin D. So all those are involved in a dairy product. And then you look at natural sugar from say like fruit and the fructose, you're going to get fiber, water, vitamins, minerals. So, sugar is not always the devil. And I also feel like sometimes added sugar is needed. It is satisfying, but there is a limit to how much we should have per day. So it's just monitoring the amount, and it's more about dosing it than really restricting it.
Hmm. So I'll love to get into the numbers of what is the amount of acceptable added sugar. But before I ask you that question, I think it's important for us to pay attention when we buy, especially on processed food, the amount of sugar added into that package. It is worth to pay attention to that, correct?
Yeah, it is worth to pay attention to it, and I like to say that everyone is individualized with their needs. So knowing, like, for example, like an endurance athlete might have an upper limit for added sugars. You know what I mean? Whereas, the new dietary guidelines don't really have a number allotment for added sugar, where the previous dietary guidelines did have a previous of 10, no more than 10% of added sugar in your daily diet. So, say it was 2,000 calories, it would be essentially 200 calories, which would be 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. So it'd be no more than 50 grams of added sugar a day, which is quite a bit. And I think what we need to look at it is overall the entire day. So I think sometimes we look at one food item that we're looking at and say it is 25 grams of added sugar. Well, if the rest of your day is very low in added sugar, maybe that 25 grams of added sugar is okay. You know what I mean? But if you're having multiple servings of that 25 grams of added sugar, then I'd probably back off. And so it's really looking at it as the whole day in itself rather than one food item. And I think that's where a lot of Americans really focus on. We focus on one thing and we don't focus on the whole entire picture, the whole entire diet. And we just obsess about one specific thing. And it really gets to people. And so it's really just looking at your diet as a whole.
Okay, that's very enlightening to understanding that sometimes it's okay to have that 25 grams of sugar in your package because that's the only sugar that you're going to have throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then can we talk about sodium? A lot of people think that sodium only means salty chips, but sodium can be high in foods that it's not very salty, right? When should we pay attention to the amount of sodium in a package?
So if you have any medical issues like high blood pressure, any kidney issues, things like that, that a doctor would say, hey, you need to follow a low sodium diet. That's number one that we should monitor sodium intake. But general population, about 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day is the limit. Now, when we look at packages, again, we're looking at the entire day. So I always use the example of, let's say, for example, you are using some frozen chicken strips, okay, that are breaded, let's say they have 800 milligrams of sodium in them. Okay. Now, to some people, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, no, I'm not gonna use those." Okay, but if you add them as part of your whole entire diet and the remainder of your day is very low in sodium, that would just add in and still be less could be less than 2,300 milligrams of sodium. I'm a big fan of convenience foods, especially for, like, busy moms, busy families, and I think that processed and convenient foods can be part of a healthy diet in moderation. And so sometimes those convenience foods come along with a little bit of elevated sodium, but then you have to look at the remainder of your diet. Your breakfast might be a very low sodium breakfast, maybe 250, then you have lunch that might be say 800 and then maybe dinner that's 500. That's still less than the 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So again, looking at your day as the whole picture. I also bring into the equation of these electrolyte packets. So people are obsessed with electrolyte packets, like the Element T packets. Okay, those have 1,000 milligrams of sodium. We have people that are using them every day with no concern about the sodium in them, but then they're concerned about 500 milligrams of sodium in a food package. So it makes no sense to me that you're not concerned about the 1,000 in Element T, but you're concerned about the 500 milligrams in food. So there needs to be that's where you need to learn, like, you need to learn how to read labels to know, like, where you're getting sodium from. And those electrolyte packets are probably not needed because you're probably getting enough sodium from your diet.
So, coming from a registered dietitian, I love hearing that from you because I try to avoid processed food at all costs because I have certain rules that you're probably going to dismantle right now. Yet I'm always struggling to feed my kids because we're busy, we're training, working full time. I can't feed my kids processed food because, of course, it happens, but I try to avoid. But I have that loaded stress because I don't have time to prep a nice, healthy meal. And yet I have something in the freezer that it's super simple, put on the air fryer and call it a day. And I love that coming from you. It's all about a balance. And yet balancing with other items. That's not the education that we get. That's not what we hear from other experts. That's not what we see on Instagram. That's not what we see on that marketing campaign. That's very enlightening to listen that it's okay to have your processed food. Just make sure it's balanced. Now, going back to sodium, is there any food that you think that it's very sneaky and high sodium that we should be avoiding?
A lot of condiments that people don't realize. So condiments, deli meats, prepackaged foods, or any of the processed foods, so frozen meals. Anytime you buy something, I think some people will be like, well, processed, canned beans are processed. Well, you can go with a low sodium version. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not going to find a lot of sodium in them, but anytime you have that option to go with like a lower sodium, a lot of like the chicken stocks, the chicken broths, things like that. Again, low sodium options would be a better option. But yeah, a lot of condiments, deli meats, chips, things like that are
Okay.
all quite high in sodium.
See, I learned something new. Condiments. Who could tell? Okay, moving forward, can you give people one simple tool, which is the 520 rule? Can you explain what it means?
Yeah. So when you look at the nutrition fact label on the very far right hand side, you will have the daily value, which will give you percentages of the daily value when we look at a diet of 1,800 calories and 2,000 calories. And so if something is less than 5%, it is a low amount of that specific nutrient. If it is 20% or more, it would be a high amount. If it's between the 5 and 20, it would be like a moderate amount. And so like when we're looking at something, let's say a box of cereal, and let's say it is, for women, we want about 25 grams of fiber a day. So let's say it's 7 grams of fiber per serving. And again, this is where you would have to look at the serving size. So it could be 3/4 cup, it could be 1 cup. Again, this is where it's going to be dependent on the cereal. And let's just say it's 7 grams of fiber. That would be what, like 24-ish grams, 24 of your daily value. So knowing that that is over 20%, that would be in, a high amount of fiber per that serving. Okay.
Okay.
And so that's what you're going to look at. Now, I do think looking at that sometimes is a little too much for people. Like I think it's a little further, that's further down the road, where I would rather
Okay.
have people look at something and be like, all right, we're going to work on your specific goals. And this is why sometimes working with a dietitian is really nice, because we find out your specific needs, your protein goals, your fiber goals, because your fiber goal might not be 25, it might be
Mm-hmm.
30. And so
Mm-hmm.
then we're just looking at something and saying, okay, maybe we need to look at your total fiber for the day. And maybe you're just comparing two cereals. Well, this cereal has 3 grams of fiber per serving, and this has 7, and it's the same amount of calories per serving. So knowing that that 7 grams of fiber one would be a better option. And this is where the nutrition fact label really comes into play, is to do a lot of comparison with different products. But again, this is where a lot of the individualized approach to nutrition has to happen, because for you, your needs, say you're an athlete, you know, we might be looking at carbohydrates completely different than
Mm-hmm.
someone who is not an athlete. And so
Right.
there's a lot of these individualized approach to the nutrition, panel that, sometimes the general population, for the most part, it works for the general population. But again, I think sometimes going off of that percent daily value is a little over people's heads sometimes.
Okay. That's a good advice.
Yeah.
It's good to start. Maybe down the
Yeah.
road we'll be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Um, Now I'm gonna use my example, which I've been saying that for the longest time. Usually, if it has more than 5 ingredients, I try to avoid. However, it's not for every single item. Like our household love this brand, love this brand with a tons. But if you look back here, this is all the ingredients. I study my labels, so I understood they're not all bad. but I try to limit them to 3 to 5 ingredients. And it seems that that might not be true.
Yeah. I would not stress too much over how many ingredients are in there. Some of the ingredients are very like they're additives to keep it shelf stable. They're you know what I mean? So it's like we really can't look at those ingredients as like ingredients. When we look at the nutrition fact label, again, we're looking at okay, if I'm looking at ingredients on a whole wheat piece of bread, I'm going to look at the fiber and the protein in a
Hmm.
piece of bread compared to the carbohydrates and the calories. So not necessarily looking at every ingredient, and I also like to say sometimes you might not be able to pronounce every ingredient because I think that's another thing that you see on social media, like, if
Yes.
you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. No, not true. Again, it needs to be something that can fit into your diet that works for you. Yes, the ingredient list is there to kinda show by weight what is in that food. Typically, they will list it as the highest weight amount in that food item and then go down to the least weight in that food on the ingredient label, but it doesn't always mean, don't take that as, you know, a yes or a no just because the
Okay.
ingredient label has more than 5 ingredients.
So, is it fair to ask you this question? What should people look for in the first few ingredients?
It's gonna depend on the food. So, like, if we're looking at something like bread, okay, so I would look for something that says, like, whole grain bread, 100% whole wheat bread, okay, something that says whole grain, whole wheat, but again, if it doesn't say that, you're not gonna get the fiber from it, and you're gonna see that it's gonna reflect on the nutrition label, so you're probably not gonna choose that anyways, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
If you're looking at something like a dairy product, I would say if the first ingredient is sugar, because it's a flavored yogurt, I would say maybe we should look at something like a plain yogurt and then add natural sugar in the form of fruit. Okay. So it's going to depend on the product. But, if sugar or even if it says like organic brown sugar, like
Mm-hmm.
organic in front of something
Yeah.
doesn't doesn't not make it a sugar. It's still a sugar. Okay.
Right.
And so we need to really like and again, I would almost want people to pull away from those types of things and start more looking at the nutrition fact labels than looking at the words organic, natural, clean, because those are just messing up what people actually should be looking at on the nutrition fact label.
Okay. Now, another question for you that has been very intriguing for me. Do you see that this little U letter
Let
here?
me see.
It's a
No, I
circle
don't.
and there is a U.
Okay.
What
Oh
does
yeah,
that mean?
I believe it's for kosher. Yes,
Okay. See, we're
yes.
learning. Kosher. Got it. Now it's my favorite part of our segment. Okay. I'm going to call a couple of foods here that it's part of my household. And for each one of them, I want you to tell me if this package is really good. What should I check on the label? If it's misleading, it's helpful, or it's most marketing. Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Okay.
start with this because we go through our peanut butter, like 2 jars of peanut butter in our, and it's beautiful jar. It says all natural, right? And it has dry roast and salt.
Okay.
How does
Okay.
that look for you?
That looks good. And so most of the time, if you have an all natural peanut butter, it will just be the nuts and salt and the oils from the nuts. That's what you're seeing separate in there. So nuts and seeds are very high in fat. And so when they, churn them into nut butter, the oils separate from the actual nuts. And so that's what you're going to see on the top. If something like let's say a Jif or like a common commercial type of peanut butter, a lot of times sometimes they'll actually add additional sugar. And so again, that's what to look at. So things like that would be like, hey, maybe this one doesn't have any added sugar in it. Okay, that's fine because you don't want any added sugar. Those are simple ingredients. That's what a peanut butter is.
Okay.
It's peanuts and salt. That's it. So that's a good one.
So every time I see the word all natural, should I automatically assume it's natural? It's good?
No, no,
How do I know
there's
the
no
distinction?
There's no really regulation on the word natural or clean, so it's they can really kinda throw it on anything. So, usually natural will kinda be like no added artificial sweeteners or ingredients. or colors or things like that, but nothing's really regulated by that. Same with the clean. Clean really means nothing. So
Marketing.
don't always take those words, as
Okay.
healthier.
Now, again, my favorite bread, which I get very excited. 21 grams of seeds and grains and 6 grams of protein, fiber, 130 milligrams of omega 3, whatever does that mean, ALA, 22 grams of whole grains. In the past, if I was to read the list on the back, I'm like, nope, it has more than 3 or 5 ingredients. But I started studying my labels and I'm like, that's not as bad as look.
Yeah. So how many calories per slice does that have? I'm just curious.
We have 110 calories per slice.
Okay, and how many grams of fiber per slice? Is it 4,
We
did it say?
have, it says 6 grams of protein and
Fiber should be under the
4
carbohydrate.
grams of
Okay.
fiber.
Okay. And so when I'm looking at bread, I'm looking at the calories per slice because some bread can be close to 200 calories per slice. And not that that's anything wrong with that, but just knowing that if you want to be in a calorie deficit to either maintain or lose weight, you need to look at calories. And so, something like a slice of bread that's between 70 to 110 calories, I think that's good. I do try to look for something that is anywhere from like 2 to 4 grams of fiber per slice of bread. And as far as protein, anywhere from like 3 to 5 grams per slice. So I would say that's pretty good. Again, we're not, whole grains are part of the way we get fiber into our diet. So we want that fiber, okay, from those whole grains versus like a white piece of bread. If you were to turn that around, it might be 80 calories per slice. So very comparable calories, but
Right.
1 gram of fiber and 1 gram of protein. So you're not getting the benefits of the protein and the fiber from that piece of bread. So those are the things I would look at. And so that to me would be a good slice of bread.
Okay. Moving forward to another staple in our household. We go through this at least 2 of those.
Okay.
It's the Greek yogurt and no artificial flavors, probiotic, grade A, very little ingredients. However, this word always gets me. Natural flavor. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's probably like a vanilla extract or something from the vanilla bean. Is there any artificial sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners like stevia or monk
Cane
fruit?
sugar.
Okay, so there's actual sugar in there. So, which is completely fine. So if you look at the carbohydrates, underneath the carbohydrates, you will see total sugar and added sugar. And so how much added sugar is in there?
So we have a total sugar of 23 grams and includes 15 grams of added sugar. So
Okay.
does that mean the total amount of sugar is 23 grams and the rest is added sugar? Or is it 23 grams of sugar plus 15 grams of added sugar?
No, its total sugar is 23 and 15 is the added. So when the remainder 8 is the natural from the lactose from the dairy. Yep. So remember we kind of talked about like the 25 grams of added sugar, that has 15 grams of added sugar. Doesn't mean it's bad, but, if you wanted to cut out added sugar, what you could do is say, "All right, I'm gonna use half a serving of this yogurt that's sweetened with natural flavors that has added sugar, and maybe half a serving of plain yogurt." So you get because even if you add, like, natural honey, it's still the same thing. You're still adding that sugar in there.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is where, okay, maybe you do half and half. So you cut that sugar down to 7 added grams of sugar. And then you then add the plain. And then maybe you add some other things in there like natural fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I like
it's not
that.
bad alone. Like I wouldn't say, you know what I mean? But just knowing that if people want to cut their added sugar.
Okay. Too many of those, but I know we're short in time. The snacks, the bars, all of them. I mean, the amount of ingredients of some of them are
I know.
horrific, like pretty scary. This is
Hmm.
supposed to have 2 ingredients, but then the list doesn't stop. It
What is
keeps
that one?
the pure organic.
Okay. Is that like a fruit bar?
It's a fruit bar that it's supposed to be
Okay.
only strawberries and banana.
It might have other, like, preservatives in there to maybe keep it maybe those are the other ingredients?
There is a lot of puree, concentrate, citrus,
Okay,
natural
yep,
flavors, vegetables, and fruit juice for color.
yeah. So it pretty much is the 2 ingredients, those are just the other things to
Okay.
kinda preserve it.
Okay.
So, like, looking at something like that, because we know it's fruit and it's a puree like that, it is mostly gonna be carbohydrate based, and when I have a snack, I always like to pair any carbohydrate based snack with some sort of, like, protein fat. So, like, if you had that fruit bar, I would pair it with something like a cheese stick, or I would pair it with, beef or turkey jerky, or a hard-boiled egg, or
Mm-hmm.
something else that has some sort of protein and fat. Remember in the beginning of this, we talked about protein keeping us satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't want you just having like it. Yes, you could have just a plain carbohydrate snack, a naked carbohydrate, but I would rather have you have it with some sort of protein or fat.
Okay.
So it would be like, an apple with peanut butter. It would be an apple with a cheese stick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of looking at like when you're comparing, especially looking at fiber content of things, like if you're comparing like apple juice to an apple, yes, you might get, the same amount of calories, but you're getting more fiber out of the actual apple.
Yep.
Okay. And it's more satisfying. And so this is where, too, same thing with a fruit bar. You might be better off eating the actual banana with some sort of protein fat type of food with it because it takes longer to eat. It's more voluminous. And that's the whole goal of fiber too, is it adds more volume to your plate versus like when people do like a juice or a juice cleanse or something like that, they're not able to really chew their food. They're just drinking it. So it doesn't
Yep.
really fill them up.
Yep. You're right. Low sugar and zero sugar. How are you careful with low sugar and zero sugar?
So when you're gonna have anything that's low sugar, zero sugar, it will have some sort of like artificial or non-nutritious sweeteners. So when we're looking at like non-nutritious sweeteners, we're looking at like monk fruit or stevia. If we're looking at artificial sweetener, we're looking at things like sucralose, aspartame, ACE K, things like that. Now, there are so many studies out there that there is no harm in these, okay? But some people do report that they will get gas, bloating, headaches from some of them. Some of them do not like the aftertaste in them. They do a very good job of decreasing the calories in food, especially for people who are trying to lose weight, because they remove that sugar, but also add in that sweetness without adding in calories. Okay. So it depends on what you're looking for. For some people, people can tolerate them. Some people, they know they can't tolerate them, but they do change the food quite a bit from a taste standpoint, but also from a calorie standpoint and a sugar standpoint. It won't change the protein, it won't change the fat, but it will change the calorie added sugar type of standpoint. And then you have things like sugar alcohols, which is a whole different topic,
Right.
which
Right. We'll
you
come
know what I mean?
back.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so I don't see an issue with them unless you personally cannot tolerate them.
Got it. Okay. Now, do I have a package of chips? Yeah, I do. Crackers, chips, tortilla chips that says gluten free. Because a lot of people think gluten free is good. It's healthier. Is it gluten free automatically healthier?
No, no, unless you have celiac disease. Now, some people don't have celiac disease and they have like a gluten intolerance and they are sensitive to gluten. And sometimes it's not the gluten alone, it's the amount or the dose of gluten. So if they had multiple meals throughout the day, it's like a dairy intolerance. You know what I mean? If someone might have a lactose intolerance but be able to tolerate some cheese, but if they did cheese and ice cream in the same day, they're like, "No, my GI system cannot handle that." But as far as something being gluten-free does not automatically make it healthier, honestly, gluten-free usually will then remove a lot of fiber and things. If you're looking at something like gluten-free pasta versus let's say, a whole wheat pasta, you are removing quite a bit of fiber from that, okay?
Okay.
And a lot of times things like that that'll be like, you know, say like the blue chips. People will be like, "Oh, these blue chips are healthier." When you do a comparison of, say, like the nutrition facts to blue chips versus regular tortilla chips, there's not much of a difference. From a fat standpoint, a calorie standpoint, you might see different oils used in the ingredients. But again, and that's a whole different topic about seed oils, which are not harmful, but people do freak out about them. Again, it's the dose. You shouldn't be sitting there eating a whole bag of chips. If you're having a serving of chips, there's no issue with that, which whatever chip you have. But those chips should not be part of your day every day or at every meal. Again,
Mhm,
it's all
mhm.
about the dose and moderation.
And balance. I love it. And so my next question is, which is my next comparison would be, I see, which I don't have it here, but it's the baked chips with the classic chips. And I compare with the ingredients and calories. It's like one is like 140 calories per serving, the other is 130
Yeah.
calories per serving. How is that possible that the difference is so minimum? What am I missing here?
Yeah, you're really not missing too much. There's not too much they change in it. It's a lot of marketing that goes into them. And honestly, what happens is I would almost rather you have the regular chip versus the low fat healthy chip because you tend to overeat that healthy chip, healthy, quote unquote, because then you're not satisfied like you would be with a regular chip. And so this is the same thing of like low fat Oreos or something like that. Just have 2 Oreos, don't have the entire sleeve, but what's happening is then you're having 300 calories worth of lower fat Oreos to satisfy the craving you would have gotten with 2 Oreos.
Okay.
And this is huge with people because again, it's a whole marketing scheme out there. And it's like we have now Doritos that are organic. Like Doritos are not healthy in the first place. It doesn't mean you can't have them, but just putting or slapping organic on the
Mhm.
bag does not mean that you can now have the entire bag.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, it's a lot of pulling back on a lot of these marketing schemes, and it's hard. It is hard because they have you. They have
Yeah,
you.
they do. Which transition our conversation to the 100 calories package, right? That says we have that the popcorn, or I've seen on the nut, it's only 100 calories. What's up with the word 100 calories? Is it something that I should be paying attention? Is that something I should be striving? Why? Why this became like this marketing? What is this number? What does that mean?
You know what? I really like that question because I don't know where the 100 calories came from. It's like, where did the 1,200 calories for a diet come from? You know what I mean? I have no idea. And so, 100 calories for a snack is not enough. And that's probably why then you're overeating at your next meal. Now, I do like single serve things from a moderation and in portion control standpoint, but that alone is not enough. So, like, if you want a 100-calorie bag of popcorn, again, that's a carbohydrate. You then need to have some cheese with it, some eggs with it, some beef or turkey jerky with it, some nuts or seeds with it. Like, I would rather you pair a 100-calorie nut packet with a 100-calorie popcorn packet, and that's a snack. But each of them alone is not enough for a snack. So, again, I think
Cute combination of, you can have, like you just said, this snack, right? It's high in sugar, it's gonna be for energy, but maybe pair with something that's gonna make you feel more fulfilled with a beef steak or a cheese steak or peanut butter and apples. And I love this. That's the balance. That's the message that I've been seeking, that we're not really getting. We're getting what is right, what is wrong, this is good, this is bad. And we're not really teaching ourselves to ask the right questions, which, what am I using this for? What is this? What kind of snack do I really need to eat right now? Do I need energy, or do I need to feel fulfilled for a long time? And I keep going back with the same questions. We are all asking the question, is this bad? Is this good? So we are automatically assuming this is bad because it has so much sugar, but it's not necessarily. That's why we're going to need another podcast to
right. I agree. I agree. There's a
go
lot to this.
over and change the mentality, the mentality of people, because I don't feel, I know I'm part of that culture. We're being educated by marketing companies, not by registered dietitian just like you. We are being bombarded with we are constantly on our Instagram for 5 seconds and scrolling what is bad, and we're not reeling the good message that it's out there.
Correct.
So thank you for
You're
this.
welcome. You're
And
welcome.
if someone who is going to remember only three things about our quick podcast, what they should remember when they're reading labels.
So always look at the portion size and the calories, and then really pay attention to the protein and fiber, that what how it relates to you. And again, how it relates to you is going to be you figuring out your personal needs.
So I love that. So today takeaway is, don't let the front of the package decide for you. Turn it around. Start with the serving size. Look for the protein and the fiber to support fullness and blood sugar stability. And check the added sugar. Pay attention to the sodium. Let's not talk about the 520 yet. That
Yeah,
rule will come back
right.
eventually. But look into labels as a tool, not as a rule. And again, this podcast is not for us to make us feel guilty. It's truly to make informed decisions, make right choices for us, for our families. And Rachel, if people want to find you, where they can connect with you.
Yep. So you can find me on my website, which is buffalodietitian.com, or any of my social, Facebook, Instagram. They are all also Buffalo Dietitian.
Okay. And to everyone listening, next time you're in the grocery store, ask yourself, is this food supporting my fullness, my energy, the way I want to feel? Or is this package just really good at marketing? Thank you for listening to the Call Movement podcast, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.